Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to use Fawn's pumpkin spice and gingham backdrops and also thanks a latte stamps for today's card, and we're going to do some masking. You'll see in a bit that I make a massive boo-boo, but I also show you that I obviously corrected. I wanted to leave that bit in because I think sometimes when we craft, you know, you watch videos online, you think it's all perfect. Things happen. You know, these things happen. So what I'm doing is I'm using the stamps to decide what's going to be in the forefront. So whatever's in the front is what you stamp first and then mask, and then you stamp the next thing that would be slightly behind that, stamp it, mask it, and then the one behind that again. So I thought I was going to use my T-square ruler just to try and line things up, but I actually get rid of it in a second. And I'm using some archival jet black ink because it's a permanent ink, and I'm going to do some more watercoloring this week on this card. And this is the mug from the pumpkin spice stamp, and so is this little shaker guy. Now I didn't feel like I needed to because they're not touching each other, I didn't need to actually mask first, if that makes sense. So I've already stamped and cut out my masks, I can't say the word, and this is just some sticks to masking paper. I had a little trouble. I think it might be a bit old because I don't use it as often as I probably should. And so it didn't, in the end, it just doesn't stick quite right, but it stuck enough that I could get my project done. So I think it's probably just really old. I've had it quite a long time. I don't know if anybody knows whether that happens or not, but that's just what seems to happen with this one. And then again, you stamp your mask until you're happy with the arrangement that you originally planned. And then what I also decided to do was take a few of the elements that are in the Thanks a Latte stamp set. There's a little fall leaf, that's the word, and I stamped it as if it was in the middle of that mug. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll do the same on all the mugs. And then I wanted to go back and see whether I could actually get more leaves on the bigger mug, but I decided not to in the end. And what I'm going to do now is take within the Thanks a Latte stamp set, there's all these extra bits that you can add in. So there's, like, I keep wanting to say mushrooms, they're not mushrooms, marshmallows. Hello. Some marshmallow stamps that you can add, so it adds the marshmallows into the mugs, and it will fit both those mugs. And then there's one for, which is why I'm picking up gathered twigs here. There's one that will look like hot cocoa in the mug, so that's why I chose the color specifically. And I'm going to use a variety of different distress oxides and also brushed corduroy regular distress ink for all of these. And this is the bit where I make this huge boo-boo, and it's twofold really, because this is supposed to be a fall card. So just trying to get it on my block, and then of course it got stuck to my media mat, but that's fine. And what I decided to do was I taped my cardstock down. I got my gingham backdrop from Fawn, and I chose festive berries. So that was the first mistake. This is a fall card, and although this color will be beautiful if you're doing it for a Christmas card, it's not the color I actually had in my head. So first boo-boo, wrong color. Right, second boo-boo, and you'll see this in a second, is that I stamped right over my images. I didn't mask them again. So second was the stamping right over my images. I was like, oh crap, I've just ruined all that masking and stuff. And then I also didn't get a good impression of that stamp because I obviously couldn't get the stamp in there, you know, well enough to stamp that image down. So I started again. I basically turned the piece of paper over. It's a piece of paper, guys. Turned it over and did exactly the same thing again. They might not be in the exact same position, but it's fine. It works fine. And I went to the right color, so I chose a rusty hinge, and I'm now using my Tim Holtz stamp platform to actually be able to, I'll end up standing up to get the ink to transfer enough. You just have to sometimes give these things a bit of a welly, you know, you have to really push a couple times and re-ink a couple times and things like that. but I masked all my images before I did this, so that they are now going to look like they're sitting on top of this tablecloth. That's the idea. It's supposed to look like a tablecloth with all these lovely mugs of stuff. So yeah, I thought I'd leave that in there because at the end of the day, these things happen. With masking, I always have to think about what I'm doing before I'm doing it. So I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to leave that in for you guys. So now I'm taking my heat tool, and I'm just going to, and the mask will peel up like that, so that's fine. But there's the back mess that was the red one. And so I got all my masks off, and then I decided that actually I needed to put them back on in a second, because I want to do more to the background. So I'm just drying off the oxide, because oxides they're a combo of dye and pigment ink, so they will stay wet for a lot longer, as will a lot of distress inks anyway. So because of that, I'm also wiping off the masks, because I don't want those to, I don't want the ink that's on the mask to transfer anywhere else on my project. I've already essentially on round 2 of this card, so I didn't want anything else to go wrong. And then I'm going to pull out a Stampin' Up. It looks like bricks. It's a stencil. So I grabbed that, and I'm using weathered wood for the background. I didn't care whether this was completely perfectly inked. I like the fact that some areas are darker than other areas. It really didn't bother me, and I actually quite like how it looked in the end. And I just went all over and roughly up to the line of the gingham area, just so that it looks like there's a bricked wall in the background. So that's the idea. So these mugs of hot cocoa and yummy stuff are sitting on a gingham tablecloth table and there's a bricked background. I'm going over the oxide with some, just around the edges, with some brushed corduroy again. I think I've said in previous videos, this seems to be my new favorite brown at the moment, but it just adds something to that, I think. And then for the images now, I believe, oh no, I'm going to spritz a bit. Got to spritz. This is very subtle. You won't really see that too much in the background, but it's there. It's there. So again, I'm going to just dry that off a bit. Here's my boo-boo again. And I'm now going to get rid of these masks, because I'm now done with those masks. And that's basically the whole background masked, I can't say that word, images ready to go. So I'm now going to take the same colors that I've been using. So I've got the brushed corduroy, and I'm sorry, my lighting's really bad today. It's so much overexposure. But I'm just putting them on the mat that comes with the your Tim Holtz glass media mat. There's actually like a woven non-stick that you can put on there, and that's what these are on. And one of those water brush things that I can never remember the name of. And I'm just using all the colors that I've used for the background. So I'm using brushed corduroy ink, distress ink, I'm using gathered twigs, I'm using rusty hinge oxides, the weathered wood, I think that's all of them. And I just use different sort of varying like watered down versions of it. So sometimes I'll use a stronger, like a more pure color, and then another time I might take it and water it down quite a lot. And then when certain areas actually dry off, you can go back in and add more color, as long as that area is dry. If it's not dry, it tends to want to muddy, and it gets all like mud basically, because the colors can't sit on top of the colors if they're still wet. They kind of want to blend together. So you can land up with this muddy mess. So if you're going to do that, just chuck some color on, let it dry. By the time you've done another bit of the area, it'll dry off, or use your heat tool just to dry it off if you want to, you don't want to wait, or it's not drying quick enough. If it's a small enough area, it should dry fairly quickly. And yeah, easy, really easy watercolor, super easy. So again, I'm just taking, I decided in this mug I needed to add a little more intensity to the color, because it basically was the same color. I tried to use opposite colors wherever I was going. So on all these on all these mugs. And then in the little shaker, I kind of add a few colors. I used the weathered wood for the main bulk of it because it's got like a silver top, and then I just added some of the other colors in there, kind of like the sprinkles might be different colors. That's, you know, what goes on in my head. The heart, I decided that I really needed a proper red, so I chose fired brick oxide, and just because I felt like the tone of the shade, the tone, I don't know which word it is, of this particular red worked really well with all the sort of autumn colors that I had going on within this. So I'm just going to clean up my mat now, and that's basically it. That's your image done, but obviously we need a sentiment as well, so I will get to that in a second. So I also, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Oh, I'm doing my sentiment now. So what I will do is I will take a piece of cardstock, and I'm actually going to stamp this 3 times. There's 3 different stamps, but I'm going to stamp 2 of them in archival, I believe, and one of them in the rusty hinge, so that I just get a different color. But what I'm doing is I'm using the edge, and I'm sorry I'm off the camera here, I'm using the edge of the paper as my like guide to where I'm going to put that. Now this one didn't quite line up so well, but I make it work. It's just that it was on a very skinny block, and for some reason I can't get my eye in if it's like that. So I'm using my Tim Holtz paper trimmer here. Just make sure that, because I had it on 2 sides of the paper, just make sure that you cut the one that's not going to go through your sentiments. I nearly did that. So just keep your eye out for that. But this is a super trimmer for things like this. It's so easy to cut these into little blocks. It's an easy way to get a different kind of look for a sentiment on your card. And again, I'm going to ink the edge. I haven't re-inked this ink applicator. This is just brush corduroy again. I'm just going around the edges, bearing in mind that like the pumpkin spice one, the ink will stay wet for a bit longer, so just be aware of that when you're holding it to ink it, but you should be fine. And then I've got these teeny tiny little foam squares, and they actually fit really well on the back here, so I'm just loading up all of these with these tiny little blocks of foam, just so that there's a bit of dimension. This whole card is quite flat, so I need to add, well, for me, I needed to add some dimension somewhere. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm also going to add foam to the back of the main panel. There's that mess again. So yeah, that was fun. So I'm just going to add some foam, like foam on a roll tape, whatever you want to call it, on the back of that. This card is actually a what is it, Stampin' Up! Calypso Coral, and this piece, it basically, I have a load of like cards that I've just got that are just sat around, and so I'm just sticking it on there, and it happened that this piece that I used for the background and for the, you know, for the main image, it happens to sort of leave a tiny border at the top and the bottom, like an 1/8 inch border at the top and the bottom of the card base. So for me it worked out quite well, because it just, you know, it was just a blank card base that I had, and this piece of media paper just seemed to work really well, and fitting on there, and it just adds a little border. But I also inked the edges of that, just so that it had, again, just ties that whole thing in with inking edges of things. I just feel like it works really well, but it's in Calypso Coral. I can't remember if I said that. And then just for some accents, I'm adding some glossy accents to the hearts and the I keep wanting to call them mushrooms, the marshmallows, and the little shaker, and that's it. So yes, there are some things that I should have concentrated on a bit more, but I wanted you to see that I make boo-boos all the time, and you know, there are ways to fix it, so never be afraid. It's just a piece of paper, it's a bit of ink, and it's a stamp. Don't be afraid to turn your paper over if you make a boo-boo. It will work out fine. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Bye.